Okay, so good day to all of you. So we are now in chapter 8, user interface design. So actually user interface design is included in the systems design phase. So for the phase description, systems design is the third of 5 phases in the systems development life cycle. Now you will work on a physical design that will meet the specifications described in the system requirements document. Tasks will include user interface design, data design, and system architecture. And the deliverable for this um, phase is the system design specification. So we have the chapter objectives for uh, user interface design. So explain the concept of user interface design and human-computer interaction, including basic principles of user-centered design. List user interface design guidelines. Describe user interface components, including screen elements and controls. Discuss output design and technology issues. Design effective source documents. Explain input design and technology issues. Discuss guidelines for data entry screen design. Use input masks and validation rules to reduce input errors. Describe output and input controls and security. So for the introduction for user interface design, so it is the first task in the systems design phase of the SDLC. So designing the interface is extremely important because everyone wants a system that is easy to learn and use. So as I've said, though you have the best programmers in the world, if they cannot design a very good user interface design, so the system that they develop will be useless. So what is a user interface or UI? So this consists of all the hardware, software, screens, menus, functions, outputs, and features that affect two-way communications between the user and the computer. So how does the user interface evolve? So first user interface is process control. Actually, when graphical user interface is not used, we have this so-called command line interpreter or CLI. So this CLI is more of process control. So what are you going to do with CLI? You're just going to type the command in a prompt and then the computer will execute. So that CLI is a process control. Example, if you want to display date or time, you're just going to type date and then press enter in the prompt or time. And then if you want to format a diskette, so you have to type in the prompt format, then the destination drive. For example, if your drive is A, format space A colon. So that is the example of a command line interpreter. Actually, this is used in the DOS shell. Actually, the earlier versions of the operating systems of Microsoft is we call the MS-DOS or the Microsoft Disk Operating System. And the UI that was used there is a process control user interface. And then as information management evolved from centralized data processing to dynamic enterprise-wide systems, the primary focus also shifted from the IT department to the users themselves. And then once upon a time, it is a process control user interface, it becomes a user-centered system. So for user-centered system, it requires an understanding of human-computer interaction and user-centered design principles. So for human-computer interaction, or HCI, describes the relationship between computers and people who use them to perform their jobs. So because of this HCI, we have developed this so-called graphical user interface or GUI. So the main objective is to create a user-friendly design that is easy to learn and use. So this is the user rights. We have 10. So number 1 is perspective. So the user is always right, just like the customer is always right. if there is a problem with the use of the system is the problem, not the user. Then number two, we have installation. The user has the right to install and uninstall software and hardware systems easily without negative consequences. So you should have an information system that is easy to install and uninstall. Not, for example, if the software is a malware, if you uninstall it, it will affect the system. So it should not be like that. Number three, we have compliance. The user has the right to a system that performs exactly as promised. So you have to be careful that with regards to the functionality of your information system, make sure that what is indicated is what the information systems is really doing, that function. And then number four, instruction. The user has the right to easy-to-use instructions by means of user guides, online or contextual help, and error messages for understanding and utilizing a system to achieve desired goals and recover efficiently and gracefully from problem situations. So for instruction, you should provide user guides or online help or the help from the software, and you should have error messages so that the user is informed that there is an error that has occurred, and not, for example, there's an error that occurred and then the software has crashed without the user knowing why. And then number five is control. The user has the right to be in control of the system and to be able to get the system to respond to a request for attention. So it is the user, of course, who's going to use the system. He or she must have the control. It's not, for example, he's doing something in the information system, and then the system, unless it's automated, but then the user must expect that he or she has the control for the information system. And then number six is we have feedback. The user has the right to a system that provides clear, understandable, and accurate information regarding the task it is performing and the progress toward completion. So users need feedback for its progress. And then number seven is dependencies. The user has the right to be informed clearly about all system requirements for successfully using software or hardware. So that's why for number seven, for software, we have this hardware specifications, or rather, or software specifications, at least the minimum, so that you will know, so this software only runs for this type of platform. So it should be clearly stated. It should not make the user be confused. That, for example, you said it is compatible to, for example, Mac OS systems, and then when you install it's not working. So you should be clear of the requirements of the information system. And then number eight is scope. The user has the right to know the limits of the system's capabilities. So again, you have to be sure and clear that this is the function of the system. It is also indicated that the limit of your software. And then number nine, assistance. The user has the right to communicate with the technology provider and receive a thoughtful and helpful response when raising concerns. So aside from instruction, so there is a help, there should also be uh, an assistant, or someone that you can call for help whenever you have trouble with your system, specifically if you bought it from a vendor or a software provider. And then number 10 is we have usability. The user should be the master of software and hardware technology, not vice versa. Products should be natural and intuitive to use. So users must not suffer their productivity just because they cannot use the information system. As it said, for number one, the user is always right. So if you have problem, it's not the system, it's not the user, but it is the system. So 1 and 10 are related. So the principles of user-centered design is, first is you have to understand the business, the nature of the business that your information system will be designed. And then maximize graphical effectiveness. Then also think like a user, be empathic. Again, even though you're the best programmer, do not think like a programmer, but instead think like a user. Then use models and prototypes so that you can test your models and your prototypes to the user if the users agree with the functionality and the interface. And then focus on usability and then invite feedback and document everything. So for designing the user interface, you have to follow 8 basic guidelines. This will be discussed one by one for this lecture. So number 1 is design a transparent interface. Number 2, create an interface that is easy to learn and use. Number 3, enhance user productivity. Number 4, make it easy for users to obtain help or correct errors. Number 5, minimize input data problems. Number 6, provide feedback to users. Number 7, create an attractive layout and design. And number 8, use familiar terms and images. So before we delve with the 8 basic guidelines for designing the user interface, so good user interface design is based on a combination of ergonomics, aesthetics, and interface technology. So the first basic guideline is we have design a transparent interface. Facilitate the system design objectives rather than calling attention to the interface. You have to know the system design objectives for designing the user interface. Then create a design that is easy to learn and remember. It should not have a steep learning curve for the user to learn the interface of the information system. And then design the interface to improve user efficiency and productivity. It's not, for example, since the user interface is very hard to learn, instead for the users to easily adapt with the user interface of the information system, they will waste time because of the steep learning curve of using the interface of the information system. And then write commands, actions, and system responses that are consistent and predictable. For example, commands such as open, save as, these are already the standards for the naming convention of your commands. Okay, so as much as possible, stick to the commonly used commands, not create another term that it's just the same. For example, for those standardized or naming conventions of the commands. Okay, next is create an interface that is easy to learn and use. Clearly label all controls, buttons, and icons. So it's very intuitive that, for example, you have an icon and then when the mouse hovers over the icon, it will display the name. That's a very good interface. And then select only those images that users can understand easily and provide on-screen instructions that are logical, concise, and clear. For example, so images that users can understand easily. So we have open. The logo for open is the open folder. And then for new, the commonly used icon is the a white sheet of paper. So that means it's new. Then for the save, the common icon for save is the diskette. So meaning you're going to save it to a drive. So use that because these are the most commonly used images for the icons. And then show all commands in a list of menu items. So for example, if you're using Microsoft Word, you can see that they have menu, file, edit, format, view, insert, and then if you're going to click that, there is a list of menu items, and then make it easy to navigate. So next is we have enhance user productivity. Organize tasks, commands, and functions in groups that resemble actual business operations. So let's go back, for example, the menu of Microsoft Word. So we have the file, edit, insert, then format. So they have this category. So it's easy for you to find, oh, if you're going to rather put colors, background graphics for your document. So you're going to go to format. Or for example, you want to change the font. Sometimes it's home, it's also in the format. So they're already categorized for you to for you to better understand and for easier navigation of the user interface. And then create alphabetical menu lists. Then provide shortcuts so experienced users can avoid multiple menu levels. Specifically for shortcuts, example for the icon. So we have for for Microsoft Word again. So you can see the format of font in the format menu, but they have shortcuts in the ribbon, which has the font, type of font, the size, and the like. Or you could have shortcuts for text keyboard shortcuts. So sometimes experienced users use keyboard shortcuts because it's easier than to find the click the menu, and then what if the menu has sub menus? It's very time consuming. So experienced user using shortcuts or keyboard shortcuts. And then use default values if the majority of values in a field are the same. Okay, next is make it easy for users to obtain help or correct errors. Ensure that help is always available. So it is imperative for an information system to have a help menu. Okay, a local help if there is no internet connection. So you can also have a help connected to the internet. So provide user selected help and context sensitive help. Okay, next is we have a minimize input data problems. So create input masks. So input mask, for example, is date. You can see in the entry, if you haven't, example, filled up for example, the text field for the date, the input mask is indicated as mm/dd/YYYY. So that is an example of an input mask, so that the user is guided, oh, that's the format of the date that they want. Okay? And then display event-driven messages and reminders. So if there is any errors or there is a tip, so you should display it so that users will not have any problems with inputting data. Establish a list of predefined values that users can click to select. For example, um, the months. Instead of typing January, February, March, you can already create a drop-down list box that is the months are already written, because it can minimize errors. Specifically, it will minimize wrong spelling. So since that is already predefined as 12 months in a year, it's better for the users to avoid mistakes for spelling. So as much as possible, you should already provided it. And then build in rules that enforce data integrity. This is used, for example, in Microsoft Excel, the data validation. Okay, next is provide feedback to users. So display messages at a logical place on the screen. So display messages are always found on the middle, not on either corners of the screen. It's always in the middle for the users for them to see them better. So it's always at the center. So alert users to lengthy processing times or delays. So sometimes they display buffering or the progress bar. So how many percent is already progressed. And then allow messages to remain on the screen long enough for users to read them. So you have to consider how long will the user read the message, and then it will pop up, and then it will be it will disappear or vanish. But then there are others, for example, for messages, that it will pop up and the user will just click OK after they have read what is the cause of that message. And then let the user know whether the task or operation was successful or not. So you have to inform the user if the operation is successful or completed, or what is the problem or what is the cause why the operation is not completed. Okay, next is we have create an attractive layout and design. So use appropriate colors to highlight different areas of the screen. So appropriate colors. Not just because your favorite is pastel or an abstract colors, you're going to consider it. You should use appropriate colors, or specifically for an information system, you should use neutral colors such as gray, white, or specifically now, there is already a dark theme. So just use neutral colors. Don't use other colors such as red, just because, for example, the information system that you are designing, its official color is red, you're going to color it red, there will be problem with the users because red is not enticing to the eyes. It's very warm. The longer you look with a red color in the screen, will make your eyes very tired because you're looking at a warm color. And then use special effects sparingly. Okay. Not just because you are fond of these special effects, you're going to use it in the information system. No. Use it if it is applicable. And the next is use hyperlinks that allow users to jump to related topics. And then group related objects and information. As I've said with the menu for Microsoft applications, their Office suite, we have the file, edit, insert, they're the common. So you have to group them and categorize them. Okay, next is use familiar terms and images. So remember that users are accustomed to a pattern of red is equal to stop, and then yellow is equal to caution, and then green is equal to go. And then provide a keystroke alternative for each menu command. As I've said, you can use keyboard shortcuts. And then use familiar commands if possible. As I've said with new, open, save, save as. We have cut and paste. Okay, instead of move. So because it's easier for copy or paste, just use the commands in which the users are very familiar with. And then provide a Windows look and feel in your interface design if users are familiar with Windows-based applications. Again, you should know if your users are familiar with Windows-based applications so as not to confuse them. If they are really familiar with Windows-based applications, you must make your information systems in user interface with a Windows look and feel. And then is we have add control features. So the following are the control features such as the menu bar, we have the toolbar, the command button, the OK cancel, and then the dialog box whenever there are messages that will appear with the system. Also, we have the text box. You're going to type, of course, the text, and then the toggle button, and then list box. So list box is a scroll bar. So drop down list box. The only difference with list box and drop down is that drop down is this is the drop down, while the list box, you can see that they are all listed. They occupy more space than the drop down list box. And then we have the option button or radio button, and then for option or radio button, you cannot select two or more unless you can set it in the system. But then option button really requires for you to only have one answer or input. So if you want many answers, or of course many answers, you should have used the checkbox. And then we also have the calendar control, for, of course, for the calendar, and we have switchboard. So it's like a dashboard where the information and then where you can interact with the system. Okay, so we already have finished with the design basic guidelines for designing a user interface. So next is we have the output design. So before designing output, ask yourself several questions. So what is the purpose of the output? Who wants the information? Why is it needed? And how will it be used? And then what specific information will be included? Will the output be printed, viewed on screen, or both? What type of device will the output go to? And then when will the information be provided and how often must it be updated? And then do security or confidentiality issues exist? So your answers will affect your output design strategy. So these are the questions that you can ask for the output design of your information system. So overview of report design. Few firms have been able to eliminate printed output totally. And then we also have the so-called turnaround documents. So reports must be easy to read and well organized. So database programs include a variety of report design tools. So for output design, as much as possible, if the form that they are printed form that they are using are really already intuitive, you can you can replicate the design so that the users will not be confused, so that it's easier for them to learn because they're already familiar with the printed form. And then we also have these character-based reports. So we have the types of reports. We have detailed reports, exception reports, and summary reports. So detail, of course, is more comprehensive, and then exception is more of you're going to report an error or an event that has happened, and then for summary is it's like you're creating a of course the for example what happened, and then you're going to summarize all the details. So more on summary reports is more on for the bosses because they only want the summary, not the details. Okay, next is you need to have a user involvement in report design. So printed reports are an important way of delivering information, so users should approve all report designs in advance. So because the users are the ones who's more familiar with the report design, you should always consult them. If it is fine with them, the layout for the report design is okay. And then submit each design for approval as you complete it rather than waiting until you finish all report designs. So for report designs, you will have a mock-up, and then we also have this report analysis form. So the report analysis form is you can use that if is really the design easy to use and easy to understand. So that is the report analysis form. So we have the report design principle. So this is an example. So you should have identifying fields for this one. And then since this is for the employee hours, you should have hours fields. And then we have the report header and page header. And then the group footer, the report footer, and then they have the page footer. And then we have this one control break on store number field. So you should the report design must be easy to learn and it's very intuitive to use. So for the output technology, so you have to consider what output you'll be using. Okay, so we have internet-based information deliveries is we have the webcast. So it can be a webinar, it can be a live streaming. So that's the different output technology. It can be for email or blogs, instant messaging, wireless devices. And then it could also be digital audio, images, and video. It can also be podcasts, recorded audio, and then automated facsimile systems. Facsimile, that's the term fax. Facsimile, then we have fax back systems. We can also use computer output microfilm or COM, computer output to digital media, And then we also have these specialized forms of output. An incredibly diverse marketplace requires many forms of specialized output and devices. So we have portable web-connected devices. So as of now, since we're already using a smartphone of different sizes, so your output design must conform with the screen size of the device that you are using. And then we have retail point of sale terminals. We have also automatic teller machines or ATMs and special purpose printers. So for special purpose, for example, we have already now the 3D printer. Okay, we've already studied about the output design and then we have the input design. So the quality of the output is only as good as the quality of the input. So we have this term, garbage in, garbage out, or GIGO. If you input an error, a low quality input, do not expect that your output will also be a high quality. If it's low quality, expect that it's also a low quality output. And an objective of the input design is to ensure the quality, accuracy, and timeliness of input data. Good input design requires attention to human factors as well as technology issues. So for source documents and forms, so we have this example of a form layout. So we have this heading zone in which the logo and the, of course, title or the name of the agency. And then we have this control zone. So what is the control zone? Control zone is the version number. So there, if it is a revised or is this the original document without revision. And then we have the instruction zone. Of course, instruction zones where you can put your general directives. And then we have the body zone, the content, and then the total zone. Okay, authorization zone is not shown here, but more authorization zone is where the signatories are indicated. Okay, Dr. Jacob Nielsen believes that users can scan a page, picking out individual words and sentences. As a result, web designers must use scannable text to capture and hold a user's attention. So for data entry screens, so these are the guidelines. Number 1, restrict user access to screen location where data is entered. So you must indicate where the user can input their data. And then number 2, provide a descriptive caption for every field and show the user where to enter the data and the required or maximum field size. For example, name, address. So they have this corresponding respective text boxes for them. Display a sample format if a user must enter values in a field in a specific format or separator. As I've said, the date. The input mask should be mm/dd/YYYY. So it means you have to put the month first and then the day, and then we have the year. And since it's DD, and 4Ys, meaning it should be a numeric because, of course, there are 12 months in a year. And the next is required an ending keystroke for every field. For example, after entering the value, the user can press enter or tab so that it will transfer to the next text input field. Number 5, do not require users to type leading zeros for numeric fields. And then do not require users to type trailing zeros for numbers that include decimals. And then number 7, default values, display default values so operators can press the enter key to accept the suggested value. And then use a default value when a field value will be constant for successive records or throughout the data entry session. And then number 9, display a list of acceptable values for fields and provide meaningful error messages. As I've said, for example, for months, we only have February is only 28. There are also 30 or 31. You can already indicate the, instead the user will input the day, they can choose from the drop-down list box. Number 10, provide a way to leave the data entry screen at any time without entering the current record. Number 11, provide users with an opportunity to confirm the accuracy of the input data before entering it. So sometimes, if you're going to confirm the accuracy, so are you sure, or if you're going to save, or it's better that once the user has typed, the system can already detect if there is an error with the text that he or she has put in the text field. And then provide a means for users to move among fields on the form. Okay, if it's not mandatory, of course. And then number 13, design the screen form layout to match the layout of the source document. This is what I've been saying. If the source documents, example, the existing printed report is already intuitive, you can duplicate or replicate its design so that the users will not be confused or will not waste time studying the new interface if the report generator or the form will just be the same. And then number 14, allow users to add, change, delete, and view records. And then number 15, provide a method to allow users to search for specific information. Okay, next is we have these input masks. So use input masks, which are templates or patterns that restrict data entry and prevent errors. Again, the example is the date, the MMDD, then 4Ys. A mask can manipulate the input data and apply a specific format. So we have this validation rules for input design, at least 8 types of validation data validation rules that exist. We have the sequence check. Sequence check, for example, for password, that is already an example of a sequence check. And then an existence check, you have to make sure that the fields are mandatory. You cannot leave the form or the input field blank. So that is the existence check. The number 3 is the data type check. Example, if you're going to input age, can you input letters? No, because we're talking about age. It's a numerical value. So that's why data type check, you must ensure that if it is age, it should be a numeric value. And if you're going to put letter or any other symbol, it should have an error message that describes that you must input a number, not a letter or a symbol. And then we have the range check or the limit check. So for range check, for example, again, for the days in a month, example for February, since you've already indicated that the month is February, and then since the drop-down list box, for example, is up until 31, and then you choose 31, example, your birthday, if you're going to put, you're just going to test 31, and then the year, and then if you type, if you will submit the form, it should display an error message that February is only 28 days. Please provide a correct day for February. So that is already a range check. Okay, next is we have the reasonableness check. So reasonableness check, and an example for this is, I've already encountered an Excel file for a government agency, which is the input is an information for the LGUs. And then one indicator is the question, it is answerable by yes or no. So does the LGU has a sanitary landfill? If your answer is yes, the next question is distance of the sanitary landfill to the municipal to the municipal hall. So since, for example, yes, you've indicated there is a sanitary landfill, you should indicate the distance. Okay. What if you answered to the question is you do not have a sanitary landfill? No. Will you indicate distance? If you're going to put 0 for the distance, it means that you still have a sanitary landfill. It's just that the sanitary landfill is just beside the municipal hall. So that's why the distance is 0. So what is the proper input that you have to put or type when you declare that you do not have a sanitary landfill? It should be not applicable. So that is the reasonableness check. Okay, next is we have the validity check or the referential integrity. So it is more with the database. Example, you are a student, of course. You are many students at our university. You have to make sure that the data that you are, for example, with regards to your username and password, that's the validity check that ensures that the records that you're accessing is your data, and it should not be the data of your classmates. And then number 7 is a combination check. Actually, it is related with number 5, the reasonableness check. So another example is, for example, again in that particular file of a government agency, if the LGU declares that, do you have a CLUP or comprehensive land use plan? If it is a yes, and then what is the date of implementation? So you should put a rather year of implementation. But if you do not have a CLUP, your answer is no, you should also put NA, because how in the world that you have a year of implementation for the CLUP, but you declare that you do not have a CLUP? So that is also a combination check. When they are together, when data validation should be checked when they are together because they are related. And then we have this batch combination check. So it's more of a for password. So it's also included in the combination check. And then we have another one for combination check. It's not just for password. It's also with again with number 5, reasonableness check. And then we have number 8. We have batch controls or the hash totals. It's more of for downloading files. They have this hash totals. So it should match the hash totals for the file and the file that you have downloaded. If there is a difference, meaning you have an error downloading or there are missing parts of that file. Okay, next is we have input technology. It could be a batch input by using batches. And then online input, we have online data entry. So for the forms now, if there is an asterisk, it's a mandatory field, you have to fill it up. And then we also have source data automation by using barcode scanner, QR codes, or we have the RFID tags or magnetic data strips. So for the trade-offs in the input technology, unless source data automation is used, manual data entry is slower and more expensive than batch input because it is performed at the time the transaction occurs and often done when computer demand is at its highest. And then the decision to use batch or online input depends on the business requirements. So next is input volume reduction. So guidelines will help reduce input volume. Input necessary data only. Do not input data that the user can retrieve from system files or calculate from other data. And then do not input constant data. And then use codes. Next is we have security and control issues. For output control and security, so you should be wary of the output security. Should it be confidential, and who are the persons who are authorized to access that output. And then the IT department is responsible for output control and security measures. So you could use diskless workstation so that all the files are centralized in one server. And then we also have a port protector, meaning users cannot copy. It's very important specifically for business organizations that, do you know that if in a business organization and then you handle sensitive data, if you're not finished within office hours and you have a deadline to make, you cannot take home the data, but instead you have to work overtime because you cannot take home the data because it's very sensitive. So we have this port protector. So for input security and control, so for input control, we should have a username password. So for those people who can access that particular feature, then every piece of information should be traceable back to the input data. So we have this audit trail. And then we also have data security. And can this be replicated? Can this be deleted? Or is it a typical database administrator who will take care of the data? And then records retention policy. So companies have this record retention policy. So some, they should archive their records up to 5 years. And then it's either they shred the document, discard, but never throw, for example, never throw especially if a financial statement, you can't just throw it in a trash bin. You have to shred it. And then they can also use encryption. So your data is encrypted, even though it is hacked by the system, it will be rendered useless because there is an encryption in your data, unless the hacker knows how to decrypt the encrypted data. Okay, so chapter summary for user interface design. So the purpose of systems design is to create a physical model of the system that satisfies the design requirements that were defined during the system's analysis phase. The chapter began with a discussion of user interface design and human-computer interaction, or HCI concepts, and then various types of printed reports, including detail, exception, and summary reports. You also learned about other types of output. So discussion of input design began with the description of source documents and the various zones in a document. The discussion of data entry screen design explained the use of input masks and validation rules to reduce data errors. You also learned about batch and online input methods, input media and procedures, and input volume. And then finally, you learned about security and control. So we're already finished with chapter 8. So I hope that you've learned from this chapter. And if you do have any questions, feel free to comment below. So again, I hope that you will like my channel, and um, thank you very much and good day.